Welcome, everybody. This is Greg Aden with Aden Leadership. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing someone I've met, but we could be brothers and sisters relative to what we do for a living. And I'm excited to dive into Melanie's background, Melanie's decisions, why in the world she wants to do what she does. But
Mm.
I'll just give you what I see when I read her LinkedIn: accomplished development of leaders. You had me there. Empowering optimizer. Looking forward to hearing what that is. Nature lover. Let's go. Effective positive change. Where do you want to start, Melanie? That's a lot for one person to do.
Yeah, I think, Greg, with all of us, where we land, I've been in my career for 30 years now.
Wow.
And all of that you just mentioned weaves through every amount of leadership development I've done. I I started as a middle school educator where
Mm,
I developed able-bodied kids to work with kids with special needs, and so integrating them into the school in a positive way, a peer teaching environment. And I still see some of those elements show up in the emerging leader program that I run today with, the mentoring we establish, and where not just person you're working with to grow in leadership, but as they work with others to grow in leadership, both benefit. So
yeah. Windsor Middle School. Windsor where?
Windsor, Colorado.
Okay.
I graduated from university, Greg, with a Bachelor of Science degree. And so I taught middle school in Windsor for sixth, seventh, and eighth graders for 7 years. That was my cycle. And it was an important part of my foundation. Number one, because those kids at that age start questioning everything,
Oh, yeah.
and they don't let you get by with things that don't work, and they'll rebel, and if they're bored, you're going to have a problem on your hands. So I learned a lot about how people learn,
Hmm.
um, and I learned a lot about the individual learner. We all integrate information and experiences in different ways, and I think that's still really a big part of what I do with executive leaders now, is to make sure I know how they learn, how they grow, how they
Hmm.
stretch. And I would say that gift was given to me, when I was a middle school educator.
I want you to share with us what was the most difficult part of that transition that you mentioned earlier, going from education to training and development. And if there was a challenge, and maybe it wasn't, maybe it was seamless. And then that's the second part of the question is, what did you enjoy most about seeing the similarities that you've touched on already?
So my biggest transition was, leaving education at a upswing, and then needing to move into learning business. And there was a company at the time called Career Track. They don't exist anymore, but they were in Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah.
Started with $2,000 and went to 80 million within 7 years. And that was an incredible ride to be a part of. And, my mentor said to me, this is your boot camp,
Mm,
go do 150 speaking engagements a year, land in different cities, handle different audiences, deal with the objections that you'll start getting. And, it was really, really good advice. And it's hard when you want to hit your stride learning something. And then a mutual, person we know in Stephen McGee, he and I met when we worked for a company called Enlightened Leadership,
yeah.
and we facilitated for them. And again, I moved out of that public seminar setting and environment, the 100 speaking engagements a year, a lot of different cultures, a lot of different environments. Really cool. It put me on solid ground financially in running the business. I was an independent contractor, and
Sure.
emerging leaders was an evolution to that. There was only a few of us as who qualified as facilitators to do that work. It was deeper, longer term work, and they were still generating the client for us, but we delivered the product. And so So that I would say was probably my biggest challenge in the transition. And you learn to pay your taxes, you learn to run your business like a business. And that I think is important for all of us. And I asked a CEO one time, we took his company from 7 million to 82, I think, when he sold it. And I said, "What did I do for you?" I was just real curious. And he said, "Well, you told me the truth when no one else would."
Isn't that funny? Again, whether you came from education or not, I assume you have children or you've had children or
No,
no?
only the kids, my four-leggeds. I don't have children of my own, but yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so it's funny because parenting and being a leader, in my humble opinion, are very similar.
Mhm.
Whether you parented or not, you've been around enough kids. Maybe we could get on the same train. We have to be a great example, but we don't have to if we don't want to. And what I'm getting to is when I want Brooks to know that I'm serious, I let him know I'm being serious, and we're going to stop playing. This is what you need to do in the next half an hour. This is what you agreed to earlier. So we're going to stop doing this, and we're going to start doing this. The other thing you said, why wouldn't we tell another human being the truth?
Mm,
And I have a philosophy, and I'd love to hear yours because it's you said that someone actually stopped you and said you told me the truth when others wouldn't.
mhm.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb, Melanie, and say the others were either weak, unprepared, not professional, or really scared of the boogeyman because he or she might fire them. Well, how do you earn someone's respect if you're not willing to tell them the truth?
Well, I think an important distinction, Greg, is we talk about a very important topic, but also one that requires a phenomenal amount of discernment on what is the truth, right? There's a nuance there. I think the really important distinction is my truth as I see it, right?
Mm.
Like this is what I see, sense, feel about the situation. And then, to invite the other person into what do you see, sense, and feel? It's into the curiosity versus this hard, what is truth? And I think you might have, why do you and why have I had a 30-year career in leadership development? You're now in the midst of it. And we could pull a string in our network and have a number of people who do what we do. And there's abundant work for all of us. And so
Hmm.
why is that? Well, I think that we have ultimately people confuse, and I'm going to bring it back to truth, leadership and power. And in my opinion, leadership is I'm making processes better or I'm making people better. It's a real simple thing in my
Yep.
mind. And that's where, the leaders I work with choose to serve. Am I improving the processes, and am I improving the lives of the people I work with? The problem is when, and I can see a movie almost going in my mind, is when a leader moves into a position that also gives them power. They can they can demonstrate behaviors that make those around them afraid. They can demonstrate behaviors that basically say, I know the truth as I see it, and I'm not interested in how you see it. And
You're saying a leader says that because now they're kind of in a position of power. And again, I hear you when you say I see, sense, and feel your truth, my truth. And again, we may be looking at the same building, the same accident, the same relationship, the same interaction of two people, and what you see is different than what I see. My point is if the leader is behaving with empathy, my humble opinion, one of the most valuable leadership traits imaginable. Second, if not third, curiosity. Do I care as a leader to set my power aside and ask people around me, ready for this? It's a really weird question. How am I doing?
mm,
How may I serve you? You may know I'm an advocate of servant leadership. I don't believe there's a more powerful way to serve and lead than have those two in common. I believe a leader doesn't say, "My door's always open. Come on in if you need me." Now that's a great start. I'm approachable. And to me, a great leader is approaching, which is a verb. Leadership is not a stagnant. It is an act. So why do you believe we say, "I'm come on in if you need anything"? But where do you see great leaders say that? And then how do you where do you see great leaders that are actually approaching others and then say, "How am I doing? Give me feedback in the moment." And that's where I'm going with truth. If I'm curious and I'm interested in your idea, wouldn't it be valuable for me as a powerful leader to ask you how am I doing? Meaning, give me feedback.
Yeah, it's and you left, right? So we've got to get people open and curious, right? I just gave feedback to a leader the other day. His team wasn't responding, when he was opening questions. And I said, Chris, I said to him, what I've observed is, you know, you're not very curious when they bring up ideas. You just jump on and say, this is the decision and keep going. And I just watch everyone, shut down. Then I happened to be in a meeting with him and I brought up something and the same thing happened to me, and I'm an advocate, which I'm sure you are too, is, we'll coach in private
Sure.
and, celebrate in public. But later I said, listen, what we were talking about, just being curious, I brought up an issue about alignment and feedback. And you just said, oh no, it's aligned, it's fine, and went on. But I said, did you watch me shut down? you know and I said, and he was just shocked. So I said, you got to just slow down and get curious. So you're making a really good point. I think you've got to enter into, I'm going to serve first. I am going to be of service, and where can that be? And then I get curious about that, and then that ultimate, can I ask the question of how am I doing? And I can tell you, Greg, I see still a lot in my career, no matter the level, where people need to develop a high level of trust to be able to even ask that question, and then trust that they're not going to pay a price for it.
Well, if you're asking someone that you care about, and again, I'm just going to be really simple here. Brooks, my 13-year-old, how am I doing? Now, what can I do better? You know what? It's immediate. And sometimes it's thought provoking. And sometimes he'll come back and say, I mentioned this, and I also want to add that.
Mm,
Okay. Now, if you ask somebody, how can I be a better leader today? And they start saying, can we work from home 3 days a week instead of just two? No. Okay. We ask questions and you already know the answer to, but it's good for the employees to feel safe to ask questions. I agree. But I believe if we asked more questions regularly and we demonstrated, no matter what you say, we're still going to be friends. We're still going to be coworkers. I'm still going to be your leader, but there is trust. That's why I'm asking you. But I believe the curiosity and empathy creates trust, and it's earned. I don't give a blank what your title is.
yeah.
Because when you show up and all you talk about is I'm a CF this, a CE that, or a senior vice or regional VP, again, I don't care. I just care about how much you really care about other people.
Yeah. And I'd
Be,
actually, Greg, say that when you have those titles, you have to commit more to bridge building,
Thank you.
because that will separate you. And
Well, if hang on a second, if appreciation and gratitude is sincere,
mhm,
absolutely. But thank you as you're walking by them, or thank you and you're dismissive,
yeah,
that's not good. So I believe no appreciation, no gratitude is better than non-sincere thank you. I'll look into that.
yeah.
No. Thank you. That was a great question. Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to bring this to my attention. That I can get my heart around. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
No, or even what you said about your interaction with Brooks, where Brooks will come back and say, I want to add this. And you said, sometimes it's thought provoking. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was thought provoking, and I look forward to the continued exploration of this. It's really bringing your humanity to this whole journey.
Amen.
The interesting thing about empathy, I think about it a lot, because I've trained with Gallup, as many of us have, in the strengths world. It's the lowest strength in our culture in the United States is
Yeah.
empathy.
Does it surprise you?
It doesn't surprise me, but it's an awareness I think we all should have, because in order to grow in empathy and to learn it, we're not surrounded by it. So it's not going to be like a collective. It has to be an individual choice. It has to be, again, back to curiosity. Does this situation need more empathy? I think for myself, we're all at year end. I have big, long lists. I want to get them done, so I can have some rest and rejuvenation time. And I see myself get a little bit task oriented, boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, whoa, 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 stop.
Yeah.
Push that aside. Your next Zoom, can you just be present here and, be empathetic of the person?
Well, let me say this. I believe it's the lowest strength or the lowest value because there's not enough people, A, who understand what it is, and B, there's not nearly enough of people, leaders, parents. Don't get me started on parenting here, but they don't show it. And
Mm,
and a lot of it is because it's hard to be empathetic when you're only focusing on me. Me. I'm just, that's where there's too much me, notice me, look at what they're saying about me. Did you
yeah.
see my likes? Meanwhile, I want to read this to you. One of the most wonderful women in the world sent this to me earlier. Empathy is a strange and powerful thing. There is no script. There is no right way or wrong way to do it. It's simply listening, holding space without judgment, emotionally connecting, and communicating that incredibly healing message of "You're not alone," written by Brene Brown.
Mm,
Brene Brown didn't send it to me. My lovely wife, Tammy, does. And we work on empathy in our relationship all the time. And it's funny, empathy starts with just wanting to listen to the other person you say you love. That's all you have to do is shut up and listen. And while
mhm.
you're listening, eliminate judgment. Just listen for where the other person is coming from. And then if there's anything they need from you, they will say, "Did you hear me? Is there anything you'd like to add? Was I clear?" And then if there's not anything that you need to add, then just thank them.
Yeah.
And that's it. But we don't do that, Melanie, enough in the workplace because we're so busy. One of the worst four-letter words
Yeah.
in the vocabulary today. But why don't you think we take the time to practice empathy more often in the workplace? You've
Mm.
coached hundreds of people in your X amount of years. What do you believe is the reason we don't slow down and take time to see other people?
Um, wow, that's a really powerful question. And I'm going to just say a couple things. I could see my younger self when you were talking.
Good.
And my younger self used to run at such a faster pace, like I just was really, I don't know, I want to say driven, but it was more a feeling inside of me. And, where I was on the go, 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 and you're back to back to back. And then you're like making everything work and a little bit, maximizing everything you've got and being
Sure.
able, and it's almost, I'm not even sure where I was running to, but I was running and
Yeah.
running hard, and I used to say I didn't go on vacation. I would collapse and then have to rest,
Hmm.
and so fast forward to where I am now. So I think we have a culture. I was recently in Italy for 3 weeks, and the fascinating thing about that was I was on a little island in the Aeoli Islands, 11 miles around, and everything moves at a completely different speed. And I was very aware, like I would wake up when the sun came up and I'd be the only one out walking, me and the cats, and out by the Mediterranean. And when you have a meal, it goes for a lot longer time.
Sure.
And you don't experience people in their devices. Of course, devices are everywhere in the world. But,
Sure.
and I found myself on my return, I felt it the moment I hit Chicago. Someone was complaining about the wheelchair not being there, or someone else was complaining about how far we needed to walk at the customs. And I was just like, no, there was a part of me that found a stillness. And you can say, well, we don't always live on vacation. And I'm like, so I would fast forward to to answer your question. I think one of the biggest things I work with my leaders now is on their calm center and getting them to feel it, getting them to know when they're in it, to be able to activate it at will. And that takes some practice. And I think that part of me that was on that go, 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 run, 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 that's what was around me. And by the way, we're rewarded for that. We're rewarded financially in our careers and all that. And we lose marriages and we lose our health, and we have wake up calls along the way. It goes, is that really how I want to be?
We have a choice to be more empathetic. We have a choice to listen differently. We have a choice to control our emotions, at least recognize our emotions first. And then we also have a choice. What words do we use? What tone do we use? Who are we being? Stephen and I used to talk about who are we being all the time. And I thought, what do you mean, who are you being? Yeah, who are you behaving like? And it's always you, but we have all these choices to make, what I call shifts, and there's 5 of them. And the other one is just to be calm, like you said. I i want to thank you, Melanie. I love the way you bring up examples of who you work with and for.
Mhm.
I love the fact that you have had and probably still have mentors in your life. I believe there's a lot of people who are listening to this saying, hey, I can shift from education to being a trainer, or being a training and development, because education comes from a teacher. Coaches are teachers. We're not therapists. We're not counselors. And if you're listening out there, you've probably heard me say this a zillion times. I don't ask my clients to lay on a couch and I'm going to appease them and please them. Appeasing and pleasing is not leadership, nor, in my humble opinion, is it coaching. But I also want to say that you've also brought to the forefront people and process. I believe we should always start with people first and then focus on the process, because guess what? Unless I'm coaching the magician, without people, nothing gets done. So argue with me that people over process and then profit. Because a lot of people want to say, all right, how are we going to make money? Well, you got to change, you got to change the process. Well, all right, who's not working? Well, how about if you evaluate and lead and coach and teach your people, and you educate them and allow them to have better processes put in place? Guess what follows? We'll make more money. You mentioned money a lot in our conversation, so you must be aware of your work is helping others have a more profitable business, or you've been involved in organizations where maybe it's a coincidence, but you've been there or you've been helping them when they became successful. And that's something that they wouldn't be able to do if leadership wasn't leading. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, well, you've said a number of things that I'm going to absolutely agree. First of all, I've been in the people business for 30 years, like that is,
Amen.
yeah, that is what I do. The word educate comes from the word educare, which means to draw forth. And I learned that, when I led, outward bound courses, we
Sure.
want to draw forth the best in a person. And, that's what we want to do with a leader. We want to draw the best forth in them. And, I love to grow leaders who grow other leaders. Like, can they bring forth the best in their people? I can, I can tell you every leader I work with right now is very people centric. And it doesn't matter
Good.
even if they're in an IT company, they're very people centric.
Yeah.
And we'll lead that first. I think the benefit is when you're in business, you've got to make money or you don't have a business, right? So
Amen.
that might be why I've spoken to it, but it's,
And that's why they call it the bottom line. I
yeah,
mean, that is the bottom line. And I won't tell you the name of the company, but they're right now telling people we're we're not nonprofit. We're a for-profit organization. So please understand what we're asking you to do, shifts and changes we're making you to ask you to do is because we need to. If you want to be here, understand the need. If you don't want to be here, we completely understand. And I
yeah.
think it's a grown-up way to speak the truth. Anyway, your last comment, and then I'll let you run. What would you like to leave the audience with?
We need leadership at all levels of our lives, at all levels of our organizations. To me, it is not about position power. It is, do we free up an individual to bring the best of who they are? You've
Yep.
talked a lot about parenting with Brooke. Can I be the parent that frees Brooke to be the best of who they are? And in the workplace, can I stand in that place if I am fortunate enough to hold the title of as a leader? It's a
Mm-hmm.
great privilege and it's a great opportunity. Can I stand there and draw the best out in another human being in front of me? And I like to even do that
Beautiful.
when I'm in a grocery store, so play with it.
Yeah.
Can you do it, with the waitress? Can you do that,
Yes.
at the car wash,
Yes.
and, just play with it where you can be that person who signals to another human being, I'm here and I'm going to make sure that you bring the best of your humanity forward.
Beautiful.
So
Uh,
I would just say it's an honor to whoever's listening, and I trust we've added some value to their journey today.
I hope so. And you brought up, I honestly do believe it's a privilege and an honor to be a leader. I believe it's a privilege and an honor to be a parent. And I believe that you have one life. I don't believe in work-life balance. Challenge me on that on another show. But unless you have four eyes and two noses and two hearts, it's irrefutable. You allow yourself to get out of balance because you are either behind on something and you have to make some shifts and spend more time here or there. But long story short, I love the fact that you said the word privilege, and great leaders do bring out the best in others. And that's not their obligation, but that's what real leaders do, regardless of your title. And I appreciate the fact you brought it to the grocery store and the restaurants. A lot of these people, they don't want to be there, but they may see that face, they may see this smile and go, wow, someone recognizes me, someone gets me. I also like what you said about you are your best thing. And again, call out to Dr. Seal Chavez.
Hmm.
And then kids in big bodies. That I just love that because
Yeah.
we are adults and we are bigger than we were when we were 7, 8, and I get it. But guess what? The being a kid and asking questions, why are we doing this, Dad? Why do I need to hold the flashlight like this? Mom, why are we doing this? And yes, parents might get tired of being asked why, but guess what? If great leaders would ask more why instead of telling people this is why, to me that could change a lot of different things. But Melanie Mills, thank you. I appreciate you being a guest here. I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate your clarity. If one thing I took away from you is you speak with such clarity. You know what you want to say, and you make
Mm.
it easy for us to listen to it. And a great gift. Wherever you learn that, congratulations. You probably just practice and practice it. But I believe I've made a new friend today, and I hope the people listening will follow you and find out how they can get in touch with you. Obviously, they'll have your website and LinkedIn here at the bottom. But thank you. I appreciate your time.
You bet, Greg, and thank you for the opportunity. And I'll just say to anyone, I've reached out to a lot of people in my journey. My mentor wrote 1% on a flip chart one time. And I said, how can you do that in front of a seminar? He said, because 1% of the room will take me up on.
Hmm.
following up. And I wrote one note that day. I was going to be the 1%. And I was so nervous to call him, and I was so nervous to go have coffee with him. And so I'm going to just say, reach out. I'm happy to help along the way. Many people did that for me, and I'm happy to do that for others. So,
You
Greg, thank
bet.
you. And yeah, all the
It's
best to you.
Yeah, it takes courage to follow up. And, I tell my clients all the time, you get 100% of what you don't ask for.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds so silly, but it's just been a great truth for me. And what if we do ask more questions and we're a little bit more curious?
Yeah,
Again,
and
my
I'll just
get
say that last thing, about your own best thing. I'm going to really say that because that was really a wake up for me when we all seek outside of us, and I think that's good. Whether we read a book, listen to a podcast, all that, but ultimately, it's got to come back and what aligns with you. Where's your discernment, and to really trust yourself. Right behind, find that calm center is. I'm saying a lot to my leaders. You got to trust yourself.
Amen.
And so trust the book you're attracted to, the podcast, action you want to take. You are your own best thing, and you're designed with everything to lead and to lead well. So
Absolutely. Well said. Melanie Mills, thanks again. I appreciate having you. As I always say, go out and be kind, be considerate, make someone's day. It's not that hard. If you care enough, it's really easy. And the more you do it, the more fun you'll have with it. And remember, be kind, God bless, and be safe out there.